He left me on a street in Prague, 3 days after our wedding. Beg for money, like a local, he said. Then drove off, wedding ring still glinting on his hand. Maybe then you'll finally appreciate what you have. The words hit like ice water. We'd been married exactly 72 hours, honeymooning in the fairy tale city of Prague. Our first real fight, and it wasn't about infidelity or betrayal.
No.
Just €30. €30 for coffee and pastries from a cafe he had chosen, then dismissed as tourist trap garbage. I wasn't complaining about the price, I said, keeping my voice low. I just mentioned the exchange rate. You were questioning my decision. Again. That sharp edge was back in his voice, familiar now, though I used to excuse it. First the hotel room, then the restaurant. Now this. Nothing's ever good enough for Princess Mia. A Czech waitress stood in the cafe doorway, watching. So were few tourists. A couple near the corner table stopped mid-conversation to glance over. I felt my face go hot. Not from embarrassment, from shame. That quiet, choking kind. The kind you start to carry deep in your ribs. Marcus, please, I whispered. Let's just go back to the hotel and…
No.
He turned the key. The car roared to life, cutting through the afternoon like a blade. I'm tired of your attitude. You want to complain about everything? Then figure it out yourself. I blinked. Was he serious? The Marcus I married wouldn't abandon me. Not 3 days into our forever. Not over a cafe bill and a tone of voice. Marcus. Wait. I stepped toward the passenger door, nearly tripping on the uneven cobblestones. But he was already pulling away. Through the window, I caught one last glimpse of his face, calm, cold, and disturbingly satisfied. Like he thought he was teaching a lesson, correcting a mistake. And then he was gone. The car disappeared around the corner. And I was standing there, alone, in a sundress, with a half-eaten chimney cake in one hand and €30 of disappointment in the other. The silence afterward was thick, broken only by the distant bells of a cathedral and the sound of my own breathing. I waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 20. The sugar melted in my fingers. The wind turned colder. Still no headlights. No text. No Marcus. He wasn't circling the block. He wasn't joking. He wasn't coming back. I called for my cell. Once. Then again. 5 times total. Straight to voicemail. His phone wasn't dead, it was off. On purpose. Still, I waited. Until the sun shifted and shadows stretched long down the street. Until the cold crept into my skin and the coffee high wore off. Eventually I walked. Through narrow streets and alleys. Past shop windows that reflected someone I didn't recognize. My feet throbbed. The straps of my sandals bit into my skin. But I kept walking. The smell of roasted almonds filled the air, sweet and sharp, but I couldn't taste anything anymore. The city sparkled like a snow globe, but none of it felt real. And yet, I still believed he'd return. So I went back to the hotel. The room was just as we'd left it, his suitcase gone, mine untouched. My carry-on was still there, wedged between the wardrobe and the bed. I opened it slowly, like it might vanish too. Inside were my passport, my ID, and my documents. He hadn't taken those. A strange relief. I ordered room service. Pasta and mineral water. Ate slowly, every bite dry in my mouth. Then I lay down. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just waited, eyes open in the dark, staring at the ceiling as the hours crept past midnight. He didn't come back. And the next morning, I went to the front desk. Excuse me, I said, voice soft. Can I ask, has the full bill for our stay been paid? The woman behind the desk checked the screen. Her polite smile faltered. Not entirely, ma'am. There is still a balance. My stomach sank. I swallowed hard. I didn't have that kind of money. Not in my purse. Not on my card. I had exactly €96 tucked in a side pocket of my carry-on. Enough for food. A train ticket maybe. Not nearly enough to cover the boutique hotel Marcus insisted on booking. The one he said was non-negotiable. I stood there for a moment, numb, listening to the low hum of the lobby air conditioner. That was when I realized something deep in my bones. Even if Marcus returned, even if he apologized on his knees, even if he begged for forgiveness with every vow he ever made, he would not be forgiven.
Not this time.
Not ever. My name is Mia Langford, and if you've ever been abandoned, humiliated, or broken by the one who swore to protect you, this story is yours too.
Subscribe.
Because healing doesn't always mean forgiving. Sometimes it means becoming unforgettable. And Marcus? He's about to learn just how unforgettable I can be. $12,000. 2 carats. And the last lie I ever wore on my hand. The pawn shop near Wenceslas Square smelled of old leather and desperation. I stood before the counter, my engagement ring feeling impossibly heavy in my palm. 2 carats of flawless diamond, selected by Marcus without any input from me, appraised at over $12,000. The elderly proprietor examined the ring through his jeweler's loupe, his weathered face impassive. "Very nice stone," he said in careful English. "Very expensive ring for so young lady." "It was a mistake," I said simply. He looked up then, his eyes meeting mine with a kind of understanding that transcended language.
"Ah.
Yes, I see." He quoted a figure in euros, far less than the ring's actual value, but enough to fund whatever came next. "New beginning, yes?" "New beginning," I agreed. It was the moment I let go of the illusion. That ring wasn't just jewelry, it was the contract. The cage.
The lie.
Selling it felt like severing a tether to someone who'd already disappeared. Back at the hotel, Sophia was packing her worn backpack. I'd met her 2 nights earlier in the communal lounge, a Portuguese medical student with sharp eyes, a messy bun, and a backpack covered in train stickers. She'd lent me her charger, then stayed for wine and conversation. There was an unspoken recognition between us, like 2 people running in different directions from the same kind of past. "I go to Lisboa today," she announced, zipping up her bag. "My Avu grandmother, she has small cafe in Alfama. You come with me?" The invitation came at the perfect moment. Prague held too many memories now, too many places Marcus might come looking if he ever cared to. Lisbon offered something I desperately needed: complete anonymity. Truth is, I had nothing. No ticket home. No one to call. Just a bruised heart and a ring I'd already sold. Going back would have meant admitting I was the girl who'd been left behind. After a grand wedding to a billionaire tycoon in a dress worth more than her childhood home. So I said yes. "Why would you help me?" I asked, still not trusting the kindness of strangers. Sophia shrugged with Mediterranean pragmatism. "You need help. I like company on train." Simple. The journey to Lisbon took nearly a day, carrying me through landscapes that grew increasingly unfamiliar. Germany's hills, France's sunlit fields, Spain's endless plains, and finally, Portugal. With every passing hour, I breathed a little easier. Sophia proved to be the kind of travel companion who understood silence, as well as she understood stories. She was escaping too, in her own way, taking one last adventure before medical school locked her into a life she wasn't sure she wanted. "You know what you want to do?" she asked, watching the sun sink behind Portuguese hills. "Survive," I said, surprised by my own honesty. "Figure out who I am when no one's telling me." She nodded approvingly. "Good start." Lisbon announced itself with gull cries and sunlight bouncing off tiled walls. Salt air mixed with coffee and grilled sardines. The city felt like a painting still wet with warmth. Sophia's grandmother, Rosa, lived in Alfama, the city's oldest quarter, a maze of narrow streets winding between colorful facades. Here, laundry fluttered from balconies, fado music floated from open windows, and the scent of cinnamon clung to the morning breeze. Rosa took one look at me and seemed to understand everything without asking. She was compact and wiry, with silver hair in a practical bun and hands that moved with the speed and certainty of a woman who'd worked her entire life. Her cafe occupied the ground floor of her building, a cozy, cluttered space with chipped mugs, scratched tables, and the kind of warmth that couldn't be manufactured. Sophia says you need work, she said in thickly accented English, studying me the way a baker assesses dough. You know coffee? I know how to drink it, I said. She laughed, a warm, unfiltered sound.
Good.
We start there. My first week was humbling. I'd worked in corporate offices before, client decks, strategic meetings, perfectly pressed blazers. But food service was a different beast. The kind of exhaustion it left in your bones was honest and unfamiliar. I burned espresso. I served pastries upside down. I confused orders. My tongue stumbled over Portuguese vowels. My hands blistered from hauling crates and scrubbing pans. On my third day, I shattered a stack of mugs. Rosa didn't flinch. She handed me a broom and said, "We break. We clean. Then we learn." I hadn't realized how much I needed that grace. But Rosa was patient. Tough but kind. She didn't pity me. She simply expected me to do better each day. And somehow, that made me rise. Coffee is not just drink, she said one morning, showing me how to steam milk just right. It is connection. People come for coffee, but stay for feeling. And I felt it. In every small interaction. In Antonio, the old man who arrived every morning at 8:15 for his single pastel de nata. In Maria, the schoolteacher who taught me how to say ciao with the right cadence. In Carlos, the widower who just wanted someone to ask how his day was. They didn't know me, but they made me feel known. I studied Portuguese obsessively, jotted vocabulary on napkins, whispered new phrases under my breath while folding towels. Each word I mastered felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But there was one thing I hadn't shared, not with Rosa, not even with Sophia. Years before Marcus, I'd graduated from Le Cordon Bleu. Cooking wasn't just a hobby, it was who I was. Until Marcus rolled his eyes at the certificate and said, "Cute, but you'll be too busy making real-life plans." So I shelved my dreams like expired spices. And I believed him. Or rather, I'd wanted so badly to believe in us, I stopped believing in me. Now, standing behind Rosa's counter, watching pastries rise in the warmth of a borrowed oven, I remembered who I was before I was curated, before I was someone's wife. Lisbon gave me peace. But peace is always temporary, especially when the villain has Wi-Fi and a PR team. My phone stayed powered off most of the time. I only used it to translate signs or confirm recipe terms. But 2 weeks after I'd vanished, I turned it on, and that's when the screen lit up. Missed calls. Voicemails. A string of text messages from Marcus. Not right away. Not in the first day. Not even in the first week. He waited exactly 14 days, like I was just a delayed delivery, not a wife who'd disappeared without a trace. And when I listened to the voicemails, it wasn't concern I heard. It was outrage. He wasn't scared. He was offended. Like my silence had bruised his ego, not his heart. "You can't just disappear like this, Mia. Grow up.
Call me.
You're being ridiculous." That was the moment something in me snapped open. He wasn't confused. He wasn't heartbroken. He was furious that I'd dared to walk off script. And just like that, I saw him clearly. Not the charming billionaire with a tailored suits and movie star smile, but a narcissistic brood in the body of a beautiful man. A stone-hearted predator who only cared when control slipped from his hands. 2 weeks in, Rosa pulled me aside, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. "You different now," she said plainly. "Stronger. More grounded." She nodded as if satisfied. "Like you remember how to stand." She was right. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I had stopped apologizing for taking up space. And then one afternoon, everything shifted. Sophia burst into the kitchen, her eyes wide. "You need to see this." She held out her phone. A video was playing. A podcast clip. The man on screen was familiar. Too familiar. Marcus.
Polished.
Charming. That calculated confidence he wore like a designer suit. "Sometimes you have to let go of what holds you back," he was saying to the host. "Not everyone grows with you. Some people fear change, even love, if it doesn't feel like control." Then he added, eyes gleaming with pretend sorrow. It's heartbreaking when someone you care for becomes unstable, willful. You try everything, but at some point you realize you're not their partner. You're their leash. The podcast host leaned forward. Marcus smiled like he was delivering a TED Talk. Every word felt like a dagger slipped between my ribs. And yet his voice was calm.
Practiced. Deadly.
The host raised an eyebrow. That sounds rough. Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head like a man who'd weathered noble pain. You love them anyway, he said. But eventually you stop bleeding just to prove it. The host laughed. Marcus smiled, like someone who'd already forgotten me. I froze. There it was. The reframe. The rewrite. Not he left me in a foreign city. But I saved myself from her chaos. Sophia looked at me, fire in her voice. He's making you the villain in his hero story.
I didn't reply.
I just stared at the screen and felt a sharp, electric stillness settle into my bones. He wasn't just trying to forget me. He was turning me into a footnote. That night, I lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling. The version of me that had cowered, that had begged, she was still there, but quieter now. The version who had once buried her dreams to be palatable, she was waking up.
Hungry. Focused.
And no longer interested in being anyone's secret. Not just healing. Not just surviving. Becoming unforgettable. And when he sees me again, I won't be the girl he left behind. I'll be the reason he never feels safe again. You want to learn business? Rosa asked, her voice casual, like she was asking if I wanted more coffee. But what she slid across the counter wasn't a drink. It was her ledger. Smudged with flour, filled with handwritten Portuguese notes, numbers, and circles I couldn't understand. Yet I felt it immediately. This wasn't a joke. This was a door. Business. I echoed, unsure whether to laugh or cry. You're trusting me with that? She nodded. You know people. And you know pain. That's good for business. It keeps you honest. I didn't know how to answer that. But I didn't say no. Rose's apartment became home without ceremony. There was no awkward first night, no hesitant small talk. She handed me a spare key and a drawer and said, Don't bring drama here. Only sleep and dreams. I nodded like a guest, but she treated me like family. The cafe opened before sunrise. My hands learned before my tongue did. I memorized the names of pastries by sound, not spelling. The espresso machine became an extension of my arms. Rosa taught me how to fold receipts so they looked like tiny white cranes. She said it made people tip more. The days blurred. The pain didn't vanish, just cooled. Like a bruise. Faded, but still tender when touched. My phone stayed powered off most of the time. I wasn't ready to hear from the past. I only used it to translate signs or double-check recipe terms. But one day, a few weeks in, I slipped. I turned it on to search a Portuguese phrase Rosa used. The screen blinked to life. Missed calls. Voicemails. Messages. By yesterday, it was a wall of digital noise. Blocked numbers, unknown senders, an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. And finally, a voicemail from Marcus's number. I played it with the volume barely audible, as if that could mute the memories. Mia, what the hell are you doing? You've made your point, all right? Just call me back. This isn't how adults handle things. The words were a mirror, reflecting who he really was. You've made your point. This isn't how adults handle things. Every syllable screamed him. Controlled. Condescending. Narcissistic. Even now, it wasn't about where I was or if I was okay, it was about what I was doing to him. How dare I become a problem? How dare I disappear and not perform the proper level of remorse? That's when it finally settled in my chest like lead. Marcus was never confused. He wasn't broken or damaged or just bad at love. He was a stone-hearted brute, a narcissistic beast in the body of an apparently gorgeous man. And I had loved him like a religion. Rosa caught me crying behind the pastry fridge. She handed me a dish towel like it was sacred. No man who makes you smaller deserves your tears, she said. Tears are for birth and baking and music, not for ghosts. I nodded. I believed her. Sort of. It was on a Thursday that she first said it. Rosa. Quietly, as if saying it too loud would make it unreal. You could run this place one day, Mia. I see it. I laughed. You mean work here? She shook her head.
No.
I mean run it. With me. Partners. The word partner hit different. Not employee. Not helper.
Partner.
What about your daughter? I asked. She lives in Brazil now. My son doesn't like the smell of yeast. She winked. This cafe needs someone who remembers things. Someone who knows how to turn silence into something useful. I stared at her. I had no business running a cafe. I didn't speak Portuguese fluently. I barely knew how to keep flour from exploding when I opened the sack too fast. But I was learning. And more than that, I cared. A week later, Marcus called again. This time the voicemail was different. Mia, just tell me where the hell you are. We're married. Do you understand that? You can't just disappear like this. That voicemail didn't scare me. It confirmed everything. The panic in his voice wasn't fear for me. It was fear of losing his property. He wasn't asking me to come home. He was demanding I return. I showed Rosa the message. She read it once, then again. She handed my phone back like it was hot iron. You ready to go back? She asked. I didn't answer, but I didn't need to. One night, Rosa handed me a blank page from the order pad. If you had one sentence to say to your past, what would it be? I thought about it for a long time. Then I wrote 6 words. I am no longer anyone's echo. She smiled. Keep it. I folded it into my pocket and slept with it under my pillow. The next morning, I powered on my phone. I typed one message to Marcus. Just 6 words, the same ones I'd shared with Rosa. No blame. No explanation. Not even a goodbye. I hit send. Then I walked into the kitchen, powdered sugar clinging to my wrist like snow. He asked for me by name. The private investigator looked like he'd stepped out of a crime novel. Weathered face, careful eyes, and a suit that didn't match the cafe's pastel tiles and chipped mugs. He ordered an espresso in perfect, neutral English and asked, "Are you Mia Davidson?" My blood turned to ice. It was a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 months since I'd stepped off the train in Lisbon. The cafe buzzed with its usual rhythm. Newspapers rustled. Milk steamed. Chairs scraped. Who's asking? I said. David Reyes, private investigator. He produced a business card with the smooth precision of someone who'd done this 100 times. Your husband hired me. He's concerned about your well-being. From the kitchen, Rosa stepped out. She didn't need to understand English to feel the shift in the air. Flowers still on her hands like war paint, she stood beside me. I'm perfectly well, I said. The cafe had fallen silent. But in that silence, I felt guarded. Protected. Your husband filed missing person reports. Contacted embassies. Spent resources. He just wants to know you're safe. It's just Mia now, I corrected. I'm not using his name anymore. There was a flicker in his eyes. Surprise? Recognition? Then Reyes dropped the bomb. Your husband is flying to Lisbon tonight. He knows about this cafe. He'll come here. The espresso machine hissed like a warning. After Reyes left, Rosa took my hand. Bad man coming? She asked softly. My husband, I said. The word felt foreign in my mouth. Ex-husband, I hope. She nodded. Then we prepare. You strong now, yes? Not same girl who came here scared. She was right. The Mia, Marcus Davidson left behind in Prague, fearful, apologetic, always tiptoeing around his moods, had faded like a bruise in sunlight. I had learned to run a cafe, to laugh in Portuguese, to argue with suppliers about the price of bread. But facing Marcus? That was a different kind of test. That day, my nerves were glass. Every jingle of the cafe door made me flinch. I dropped 3 cups. Burned my wrist. Forgot Maria's usual order. Rosa didn't say a word. She just handed me my bag and said, Go, rest. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced. I practiced what I'd say and what I wouldn't. I pictured his face, his voice, the way he'd twist concern into control. But what haunted me most wasn't how he'd act. It was how I would react. Would I shrink again? Would I flinch? Would the old patterns pull me back into the role he trained me to play? The next morning, Lisbon woke golden. Birdsong, church bells, the usual rhythm. I was steaming milk for Carlos's second coffee when the door chimed. Marcus walked in. I saw him before he saw me. Still tall, still polished. Same bag I once gave him. He looked around, judging everything with thinly veiled disgust. Then he saw me. Time froze. His eyes swept over my apron, my work-roughened hands, my posture. Jesus Christ, Mia. What have you done to yourself? There it was. Not how are you? Not are you okay? Just a demand. A judgment. Behind me, Rosa stood still. Steady. Silent. I smiled. I grew up. Would you like some coffee? He blinked, caught off guard. Coffee? I've been searching for you for over a month. Your parents are terrified. I thought you were. He abandoned me in Prague 2 months ago. His search began 30 days too late. But I'm not, I said. I'm here. I'm safe. I'm happy. Happy, he scoffed. This? A third world slum? The word hit like a slap. And though most of the cafe didn't understand his words, they felt it. Senor Antonio folded his paper. Maria froze mid-sip. Rosa didn't move, but something sharp rose in her shoulders. This is my home, I said. These are my people. He laughed. This is a breakdown.
Not you.
You're a suburban housewife, not some peasant barista. The old Mia would have cried. Not this one. I untied my apron, stepped around the counter, faced him in the center of the cafe. You made your choice in Prague. I'm just honoring it. Besides, I'm parting ways from you. Silence. Even the espresso machine paused.
He stared at me. Shock. Rage.
Then calculation. You'd throw everything away for this? I looked around. At Rosa's quiet defiance. At Carlos's patient smile. At the sun warming the floor tiles like home. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather live with regret for my choices than for the ones made for me. He didn't say another word. He walked out too slowly, like a man already planning his next move. 2 days later, I was stacking croissants behind a glass when I saw him again. Marcus. He looked even sharper than before, clean-cut in a crisp navy suit, like someone who had never skipped a beat. He didn't smile, just walked in, adjusted his cuffs, and said, loud enough for the other customers to hear, "You've had your fun. It ends today." I didn't move. He stepped closer. "You heard me," he said. "Let's not make a scene. Come outside." I followed him out to the alley behind the cafe. The air smelled of sea salt and yeast. He turned on me the moment the door swung shut. I gave you time. I waited. I let you play this little independence fantasy out, Mia. But this ends today. Or what? I asked, keeping my tone cold. You think I'll let you humiliate me? His voice rose. I'm not in the habit of tolerating disobedience, let alone abandonment. You are still my wife, Mia. No, Marcus. You made your choice in Prague. I'm just honoring it.
His jaw tightened.
You will come back. Or I swear to God, I'll make sure you never work, never live peacefully in any country you set foot in. You think you're safe just because you're baking pastries in Lisbon. He was spiraling. The mask had cracked. And suddenly, the fear gave way to clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. That night, I reopened the thread under the podcast episode he'd once appeared on, the one where he painted himself as the golden husband, claiming I'd left him without warning, calling me unstable, willful, and emotional. The comment section had been filled with pity for him back then. Narcissists thrive on sympathy. But I wasn't silent anymore. I typed. I was the wife he left behind on our honeymoon in Prague. He told me to beg for money like a local, then drove off and disappeared. He is not the victim here. I hit post. Then I contacted the podcast host. She agreed to let me speak. 2 days later, I was on camera, shaky at first, then steady. I told my story. Every ugly detail. From the public humiliation to the veiled threats. I talked about how he'd controlled everything, even my dreams. How he'd mocked my degree from Le Cordon Bleu, dismissing it as cute and impractical, just another hobby. But what broke the dam was not me. It was a tourist. A man who'd been vacationing in Prague that same week messaged the podcast team. He had footage from Charles Bridge, a short clip taken discreetly from his phone showing a man yelling at a woman in a sundress near a rental car. He'd caught only a few seconds, but the timing and location matched. He showed a receipt from the same hotel we'd stayed in. Said he remembered the man, an arrogant one, loud, always on his phone. And the woman? She looked like a ghost walking. The video went viral. Suddenly, Marcus's image as the perfect husband began to crack. His threats meant nothing now. He couldn't sue what he couldn't deny. People were seeing through the mask. I received thousands of messages. Women who said they'd been gaslit, abandoned, silenced. For the first time, I felt something deeper than survival. I felt power. Lisbon mornings used to start with me kneading dough in silence. But now, the clatter of spoons, the grind of coffee beans, and the laughter of strangers felt like music. My cafe was packed. Not because of the podcast. Not because I'd become a trending face in a viral video. But because truth has gravity. Especially when it's spoken by someone who is never supposed to speak. One by one, women came in. Some to thank me. Others just smiled, lingered, and left with a warm croissant and watery eyes. They recognized the ghost I used to be. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Marcus, of course, tried everything. He issued a public statement. Denial, deflection, damage control. He even claimed the tourist video was deepfakes and misunderstandings. It didn't work. Another woman came forward, his ex-fiancé. Said he'd broken her confidence, isolated her, lied constantly. She had old texts. Messages he never thought would resurface. That cracked his mask wide open. By the end of the week, Marcus had deleted all his social media accounts. And still, he texted me. You win. You happy now? I didn't reply. He texted again. I never hit you. I never cheated. I just expected more. And there it was. His final confession. He didn't love me. He just wanted to own me. That Friday, I walked to the registry office. A thin gold chain around my neck. No ring on my finger. The Portuguese clerk smiled as I submitted the translated documents. She glanced at the reason I'd listed under grounds. Emotional cruelty. Abandonment. Psychological abuse. Then she looked up and said, You look free. I nodded. I chose to be. Later that night, I walked to the harbor. Not the bridge in Prague where he left me, but echoes travel. And wounds don't need maps to reopen. This was Lisbon. My Lisbon. A boy played violin, his music rising like the tide. I dropped a few euros into his case and sat on the stone ledge, letting the wind tangle my hair. Lisbon sparkled behind me. The sea breathed beneath my feet. He once left me on a bridge. But this one belonged to me. The cafe still smells of cinnamon, lemon zest, and second chances. On the wall, a photo, me laughing behind the counter, flower on my cheek. Beneath it, a brass plaque. The currency of freedom isn't money. It's truth. Mine had finally been paid. Stories like this aren't just fiction, they're echoes. Subscribe, more untold voices are waiting.